Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss an important question about Farage's intentions to take over the Conservative Party, as well as how Sunak is predictably considering countering this latest play by doing the opposite of sensible strategy. But the takeover first of all. Tyson and Farage both claim they want to destroy the Tory party. However, just as with Brexit, they don't seem to want to explain what should emerge from that development until it's too late. But realistically, there are only two options. The first is that they aim to position Reform UK to pick up Tory voters and become the replacement party. However, this doesn't seem to be the plan. When Krishnan Guru-Murthy of Channel 4 News yesterday asked about Nigel Farage making Reform UK a proper political party, he sounded very non-committal. Oh, do we really need to? He's quite reticent, in fact. The second option is that they literally take over the Tory party, that Reform UK put enough pressure on the Conservatives to adopt a harder line on populist policies, shut out more moderate voices, and then arrange to simply take over once the Tories have finished burning through the obviously incompetent populist leaders that are queuing up to embarrass themselves after Sunak. That is not as crazy as it sounds. After all, the Conservatives are now wedded to a complete commitment to the hard Brexit. Sure, electoral defeat could encourage them to revise that position, but at the moment it doesn't seem likely. The argument which will appeal to members is more likely to be that Brexit wasn't insane enough rather than that it was too insane. And after realising that whichever populists survive the coming Tory call next month are all operationally useless, Farage may imagine that they beg him to take over, assuming he doesn't win in Clacton. They could give him a nice safe by-election instead, if such a thing is possible, and invite him to become Conservative leader. He's got no regard for the Conservative Party, of course, no respect for political party structures either. He would then set to work imposing purity tests for Conservative candidates for the following general election. It won't matter what happens after that election. If he loses badly, he may or may not be forced to resign, but he will leave a Conservative Party where 100% of the MPs left are committed lunatics. And if the Tories lose, but not as badly as this year, he may still be allowed to stay on as leader in order to, keep building, as they'll call it. After all, he will have made sure that as many Tories as possible in Parliament are loyal to him. At this point, the Conservative Party is fundamentally changed, and he just thinks he has to wait for Labour to falter and he'll be in power. Now, I'm not saying this is the plan, but there must be some sort of plan, and it doesn't seem to be to develop Reform UK as a serious party. And even if this is the plan, doesn't mean Farage will make it work, but let's say he did. Could Farage's Conservatives actually win an election? Even if Labour lose their focus on electoral strategy, as they inevitably will when they get complacent, because they always do, worst enemy. The problem for Farage and his posse is that there might be a realistic plan to fundamentally change the Conservative Party, but they cannot change their voters as easily. You can shift public attitudes over time. Indeed, we've seen that happen, but it's a much slower process. Voters are already abandoning the Conservative Party over their post-Brexit identity because the Conservative Party has changed more quickly than those voters have. A more explicitly divisive populist figure is more likely to put off even more of these voters. There are only so many people who will vote tribally for a party no matter what. As people keep pointing out, we are not like America. The fact that we have quite a few mainstream political parties is evidence of that. The fact that Reform UK could come out of nowhere to grab a big chunk of the electorate is evidence of that. People aren't all that wedded to loyalty to political parties here. Now, this won't necessarily change the plan, if this is indeed the plan. Like many extremists, Farage may believe that there is a silent majority on his side, even though they never seem to vote for him when he stands for Westminster seats. But he may think he can win enough votes to win an election. Or an increasingly extreme Conservative Party may think a merger with him could win them enough votes to form a government, and Farage goes along with it because, there's a lot of money and favours to be wangled as Conservative Party leader, even in opposition. But this is all speculation for the future, maybe the far future. Some think Farage will want to put pressure on the Tories now to do a deal, but as that deal involves giving Farage a clear run at Clacton in return for helping more swivel-eyed loons win their seats, Sunak won't go for it. All the evidence is that Sunak is trying to stack the odds in favour of moderate Tories after the election with his candidate selections. So it doesn't seem credible that he would actually deliberately facilitate a deal with Farage. However, what I did say in my video yesterday that I did see Sunak doing was reacting by doing, I think the words I used were, more of the wrong things more loudly. And sure enough, we're now getting reports that his team are thinking of taking a harder line on the European Court of Human Rights. Utter madness. I've said before that it is the Tory culture wars which helped feed Reform UK. They were nowhere until their Rwanda plan nonsense, and it all snowballed from there. And think about the lunacy of it all. Consider that there are two types of undecided voter that Sunak can realistically target. Those who lean towards Reform UK. They sort of recognise that Reform UK aren't going to win in their constituency, so they may be prepared to vote tactically for the Conservatives, but they're leaning towards Reform UK. And then you've got undecided voters who are more moderate Conservatives who don't like Labour, but they really don't like this new populist Brexit cult that the Conservatives have become. So they're more likely to lean towards Lib Dems or Labour. We know from polling that Sunak could more easily win the votes of the second group. And now that Farage has thrown his lot in properly with Reform UK, I mean, the Reform UK leaning undecided voters are now going to lean more towards Reform UK, aren't they? So they're going to be harder to win back. So why would your reaction to this be to double down on the crazy when you can't outbid Reform UK on insanity policies? Also, for every Reform UK leaning voter they win back, that's worth one vote because they're not actually competing with Reform UK. But for a moderate undecided voter who might otherwise vote Labour or the Lib Dems, that's worth 2 votes for the Tories if you can win those back. After chasing voters around the centre, you know, it's not only easier, because all you need is sensible policies for that. If you have sensible policies, you will attract sensible people. To attract crazy people, you need crazy policies, and your policies can never be crazier than Reform UK's, because they know they will never have to put them to the test. Also, there are more votes in the centre. Should be a no-brainer. However, the Tory campaign team seem to have negative brains. So Sunak, yes, may well decide to do the polar opposite of what he should to counter Farage and end up playing right into his hands. It is not going unnoticed that Nigel Farage basically his project began when David Cameron was too weak to simply ignore him and tell the ERG to sit down and shut up. His appeasement set in place a sequence of events which has included many more appeasements, which now means that Farage could contribute to the actual destruction of the Conservative Party as it has existed for centuries. And yet the Tories are still thinking of more appeasement. Oh, one more bit of appeasement, that'll do the trick. It's like they just don't learn lessons. I don't know why people are complaining about VAT and private school fees. I really don't. A private education clearly doesn't make your child capable of rational thought. Quite the opposite on the evidence of this Tory government. And this is just one aspect of their stupidity. The Tory campaign is full of unforced errors that nobody with a brain would be making. They launched their first election party political video last night. It's full of shots of Rishi Sunak walking away and a few seconds of the Union flag being flown upside down. Now, a lot of people are not going to pick up on that, but it shows the lack of attention to detail that is likely to keep the more noticeable cock-ups rolling into the view of the public over this final 30 days. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.